got a Bible, Luke chapter 9. Luke chapter 9. Parents of a brand new baby are thrilled. They're a little tired, but who wouldn't be after all of that? But they are absolutely thrilled, happy about the prospects of this new life that they have brought into the world. They're not so sure what to do with her just yet. Who is when you're a brand new parent? But they know that it's going to be great. One of their friends stops by and says, basically, what do you do now? And the parent says or thinks, I don't know, hadn't really thought about it. What comes next? You had this baby, then what? And the parents, if they're like we were and probably like you were, you probably start thinking, I want to give this child a good life. Every parent, I think, shares the same hope. Want to get them off to a good start, want to give them everything they need for life, don't want them to lack for anything. We want them to have a little bit more than we had when we were growing up. That's probably the same desire for most parents. We want these new kids, these new babies, to live a good life. But how do you do that? What does that even mean? What is this good life? And so you press the new parent a little bit more. What's next? Well, we want to give our baby the best. We all do, right? We want to have the nicest things for our new child, embroidered onesies and the Pampers name brand diapers for the first child, maybe not the second one, but at least for the first one. And you change it as often as it's needed, and you have the nicest strollers and the best car seats. Baby's not going to want for anything. Off to a great start. And then what? Well, baby's going to grow up, and we want the baby to grow into a well-rounded, developed young child. And so we read to her every night, and we make sure that she has healthy meals and even healthier snacks and things like that. We're trying to get her off to a good start for a good life. That sounds great. Healthy meals, healthy snacks. They'll love that. What next? Well, baby grows up and eventually is going to go to preschool. You want that baby to be an academic kind of child, and so you read to her every night, want her to hear a lot of words before she ever goes to school, want her to be an early reader so she can be ahead of her peers, and so she gets started at preschool, and man, things are going great. She's way ahead of everybody else. That sounds great. Great plans. And then what? Well, of course, we want her to focus on academics because how can you have a good life without academics? And so we'll teach her times tables and her cursive writing, and she'll learn how to read, and she'll just be advanced more than her peers, we think. We got big plans for this one academically. Sounds great. Then what? Well, we want her to be well-rounded, and so we want her to be sociable, make sure that she's got plenty of friends, and so we'll make sure that she's in these clubs, the robotics club and the beta club and the chess club, and then we'll make sure she's in sports, and she'll join all these teams and never miss a practice. She'll have all kinds of friends, and things will be great for her. She's going to be a well-rounded, sociable person with all kinds of friends. Sounds great. And then what? Well, we want her to get into a very nice university to set herself up for the good life. And so we'll make sure that she enrolls in the hardest classes and always does her homework and her IXLs. We'll make sure that she has all the resources that she needs to excel academically. Probably start prepping for the ACT around 9th or 10th grade so that she makes a good score and gets into the university of her choice. Big plans. And then what? Well, then she'll be set for life. She'll get into a great university. She'll excel in her chosen field, and she'll have her choice of any job that she wants when she graduates from school. She'll be all set to make all kinds of money in the workforce. Sounds great. Big plans for this newborn baby girl. What next? Well, she'll start working, and she'll outwork everybody else. That's the work ethic that we as parents will instill into this little baby girl. She'll work harder than everybody else. She'll work longer than everybody else. She'll show her bosses that she's committed, and so she'll be on a great start to a good life. She'll get promotions. Her boss will take notice of how much she works, how hard she works, how much she puts in, more than anybody else, and so she'll be promoted several times. Sounds great. Making a lot of money. And then what? Well, the new parents think, we'd like to be grandparents one day, so maybe she'll find a man and settle down and maybe have a family, start a family, and that way they can have children. She's going to work a lot. We instilled that into her, but she's going to have a child, have a family. She's going to be a great mom like we are going to be to her. Sounds great, going to have kids. Then what? Well, she'll raise those kids like we raise her, like we're going to raise her, and so they'll excel academically. Our grandkids will. They'll be great in sports. They'll be great in the clubs. They'll be great in this and great in that. They won't miss anything. Sounds great. And what? Well, I guess the kids will grow up, and then this little girl will be an empty nester at some point. They'll be in their 60s, but they'll be well on their way to retirement. Things are going to be looking good for them. They're almost ready to live the good life, and then retirement comes. They stop working. They start doing whatever in the world they want to do, and they enjoy that kind of life for a really long time as long as no medical crisis or financial crisis or world health crisis or any kind of other crisis shows up, they are well set to live the good life once they finally retire. Got big plans for this little girl that's just been born. And then what? I guess they'll get older and older and they'll kind of do what they want to do. They'll be in their 90s. They would have lived a good, long, happy life. And then what? Well, you know what happens after that. After you've lived a good, long, happy life, eventually they'll pass away. And then what? Now, of course, I totally made every bit of that up. Nobody would live like that, would they? Nobody would think like that, would we? Nobody would think about life, the good life, as something always in the future and something that we never can attain here in this world. We wouldn't think like that, would we? I totally made this person up, made the parents up, made the baby up, made the whole story up in my office this week. She's not real. If you feel like I was talking about you, I promise you that I am not. I told you about her and I told you about her life so that maybe you can take an objective look at your own. And so maybe we could all take an objective look at our own lives. When you think about that lady's life, when did she finally start living the good life? Just think about that. When was it that she started to live a good life? Was it when she was a child, or when she was a teenager, or when she was in the workforce, or was it when she finally retired from the workforce and rode out into the sunset? At what point did she start living what you would call the good life? Did she ever find that life? Did she ever live that life? Was it something that happened during her life or at the end of her life, or was it something that happened in the afterlife? What is the good life in your mind? I told you her story so that you can think about yours. This is not about her. She doesn't even exist. What we're talking about this morning is about me, and it's about you, and it's about us, and it's about what we do with our lives. She was trying to gain something, and so let me ask you, first of all, this morning, what is it in your life that you are trying to gain? If you think about, what is it that I'm striving for? What is that for you? If you're a child, it may be just, the next fun thing you get to do. If you're a teenager, it may be good grades. If you're an adult, it may be the next promotion or the next job or the next pay raise. If you're a little bit older, it may be the next trip or vacation or whatever it is. What is it that you find yourself trying to gain? Let's say you get it. Whatever you're striving for, you finally achieve it. Let's say that happens. Then what? What's next on the horizon? Is it always something else? You feel like you get this one thing, and if I accomplish this thing or achieve this one thing or get this one thing, then everything's going to be good until you get it and you realize it's really not a whole lot different than it was before. Then what? Where does your focus turn? What is it, in your opinion, that makes for the good life? If somebody said, hey, would you give me like a 30-second speech on the good life, how would you describe it? Are you striving for that life? And I want to know what happens. Let's say you get it. You live it. Then what? What are you doing right now to go about seeking your version, your conception of the good life? What are you doing right now to live that kind of life? Let's say you do it. You get it. You live it. Then what? These are not just abstract questions that I made up in my office this week. It's not that at all. These are the very questions that Jesus addresses when he talks to his disciples and to everybody in Luke chapter 9, verse 23. All right, let me set the scene for you. The way Luke has pieced his gospel together, what Jesus says in Luke 9:23 comes right on the heels of what he's just said about his own life going to the cross in verse 21. He strictly charged and commanded them to tell this to no one, saying, the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and on the third day be raised. Well, hey, look, you're in church at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning. You know that Jesus went to the cross, that he's going to be killed, that the chief priests and the scribes and the religious leaders are going to rise up against him and put him to his death. You knew that was going to happen, and you like it. We like that. That's salvation. That's forgiveness. That's the sacrifice that Jesus makes for us. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. We like that. We love that. It's good. But then he goes right from that, his cross, right to verse 23. And he said to all, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. Verse 25. What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses or forfeits himself. And so right on the heels of Jesus talking about his own cross, he looks at his followers and says, by the way, you all need to deny yourself, and you all need to take up your cross every day. Now, we reduced the cross in 2023 to a necklace that we wear or an emblem that hangs from our rearview mirror or just some kind of proof or sign that I'm a Christian. I wear the cross. But the cross, when Jesus speaks of it, is a Roman instrument of death. In fact, it's the very best Roman instrument of death. And so when they heard Jesus say, take up your cross every day, they don't mean put on a necklace. They don't mean let your cross show. They mean you have to live this kind of sacrificial life. And if I'm right about this, Jesus can already hear the objections. Because let's face it, whenever he talked about the coming kingdom and we talked about the cross and he talked about going to his death, his disciples' normal immediate reaction is, hey, by the way, when you come into the kingdom, we're going to have power, right? Whenever the kingdom finally comes, we'll have the chief seats and we'll have the money and the authority and we'll be in charge when the kingdom comes, right? They're seeking the good life. Then what? Goes to the cross. And then what? Well, what Jesus says right after that is you've got to take up your cross every day. And he knows the objections. Why in the world would I want to take up my cross? If I'm seeking the good life, why would I want to sacrifice for the good of others who are probably seeking that same kind of life? Why would I want to do something that's going to help them and not help me? That's an objection that probably the disciples had. What do you mean, deny myself? Why would I want to do that? I'm seeking the good life. I'm trying to live the good life, trying to make it on my own and finally attain that good life status. Why would I want to deny myself if I'm trying to live that good life? The objections are probably countless. Jesus knows these objections because if I understand what happened right before he bears his own cross, he battles many of these objections in his own mind. Let this cup pass from me. Take this cup of suffering away from me. He prays to God in the Garden of Gethsemane, looking for a better way, a different way maybe. He knows the objections to bearing our cross. They hit really close to him. And so he also knows how to overcome them. I love what he says in verse 25. Take up your cross, deny yourself, and then you can come follow me. Why in the world would I want to do that? I'm trying to live a good life. I'm trying to gain the whole world. I'm trying to have power and authority and comfort and control and security and status in this world. And Jesus says in verse 25, what do you really have? What do you really have if you gain the whole world and lose your soul? That's not what it says. That's what Mark says in Mark chapter 8. That's not what Luke says. It's easy if you just read Mark's gospel to say, oh, this is about the end of times and my soul after death and things like that. No, it's not. It's about your whole being. That's what the word means. And so Luke doesn't give us that opportunity. He says, really, I want you to think about this. Jesus says, what do you have? Like, what have you got? What have you gained if you have the whole world, like all the goods in the cosmos? All the things in the world. What if you have it, but you lose yourself? Now, maybe this whole gain the whole world talk is lost on you because you're sitting here thinking, I live in West Tennessee. I can't even gain West Tennessee, much less the whole world. That kind of thing is reserved for the Elon Musks and the Bill Gates and the Warren Buffetts of the world. Those are the guys, the super elite, rich, who can gain the whole world. Well, okay, maybe. But are you still striving to gain something that means the world to you? We use that language. Are you still striving to gain all that you can? It may not be the whole world, but it's more than the next guy or the next gal. What are you striving for? What is it that means the world to you? What are you striving today to gain? What do you really have if you get it? And in the process, you lose yourself. That's what Jesus asks. That's his words. What do you have if you gain the whole world, the thing that you got your heart's desire set on? You gain it, you get it, you achieve it, you live it. But in the process, you've lost the life that you were supposed to live. You've lost the life that God created you to live. What are you striving to gain? Is it more money? Is it a better job? Is it a bigger retirement account? Is it a newer car, a bigger house, a little bit more than the next guy or the next gal? What if you get it? What then? That's the question. Is it some sort of power that you want, some sort of control over your life or over some situation or somebody else's life that you're trying to gain control of and power, and you're looking for independence and security from that power? What is it that you got your heart set on and you're striving for it? Let's just say you get it. What then? Then what? Or do you, I do this some, do you tend to equate the good life with fun and recreation and comfort and just doing whatever in the world I want to do, a relaxing existence? And so everything you do, you strive and strive and strive for more comfort and fun and recreation in life. Got the FOMO, right? What are you striving for? And what if you get it? What do you really have? If in the process you've lost the life that you were supposed to live. I'm not talking about you quit breathing and you die. I mean, in the quest for the whole world, or whatever means the world to you, you lose the life that you are supposed to live. What if striving for the whole world, or whatever means the world to us, what if striving for that is the biggest obstacle to our spiritual growth? It's really not a what if, because that's what Jesus is teaching here. What if the striving that we have to live or achieve or find this good life that we think we ought to be living, what if striving for that good life is the very thing that's keeping us from the good life? Could it be that a focus on gaining and achieving and growing and accumulating more and more, could it be that that is destructive and actually counterproductive to the kind of life that Jesus calls us to? I don't think it's a question. I think Jesus is very clear in painting this picture for us. There are pictures. Luke 9 is where he says this. What do you have if you gain the whole world and lose your life or forfeit yourself? A little bit later in Luke chapter 12, he's going to introduce you to a man who's very wealthy. He's a farmer and he's had great crops and he's accumulated all kinds of stuff, so much so that he's got to tear down his barns and build bigger barns to hold all the grain that he's got from his harvest this year. And he has gained the whole world, gained all of it. There's a poor guy out there who doesn't have anything, and instead of providing that need, the rich man builds bigger barns to store all the good life up for himself. Jesus says, you fool, you fool. You had the whole world, but you lost the life you were supposed to live. That's in Luke chapter 12. In Luke chapter 16, you're going to meet another man. He's just called Rich Man. He has somebody living at his gate. All right, he's wealthy enough to have a house with a fence and a gate. And he's got a poor man. We know his name, Lazarus. Lazarus is living at the gate. The rich man is faring sumptuously every night, throwing himself and his friends a feast every day. You want to talk about good life? Gaining the whole world? That guy's got it. He's got it. And there's old Lazarus down there at the gate, doesn't have any food, just wants some scraps from the table. That's all, just a few scraps. And the rich man never gives Lazarus any scraps. He knows his name. He's going to call him by name a little bit later as a servant. He knows his name, knows the situation. But in his quest for maybe gaining the whole world, or maybe more apparently, keeping that whole world for himself, he misses the kind of life that he's supposed to live. That's in Luke chapter 16. A couple chapters later, in Luke chapter 18, you're going to find another man. This one is a rich man. He's also very young, and he's got a lot of power. Rich young ruler is what we call him. And you want to talk about a guy who's gained the world. That guy's got it. He's got everything you'd want. The money, the friends, the youthfulness, the power that maybe you're striving for. He's got the whole world. He's got what means the world to a lot of us. What do I need to do to inherit eternal life? He asked Jesus. Well, keep the commandments. Done most of that since I was a kid. One thing you lack, sell what you've got. You mean the whole world that I've gained? I don't know about that. It kind of sounds like denying myself and taking up my cross, doesn't it? Sell what you've got, give it away to the poor. That's the life you're supposed to live. Then you can come follow after me. And the rich man went away. Can you finish the sentence? Sorrowful, sad. Why? He gained the whole world. He had it all. Wealth, riches, power, youthfulness, probably all kinds of friends, even a religious guy. Gained the whole world. What did he really have? Sadness. What if This drive and striving to gain the whole world, to live the good life, is precisely what is keeping us from living it. That's what Jesus is asking. What do you have, really, if you gain the whole world, but you miss out on the life that you are supposed to live? Back it up a verse. Verse 24. Doesn't get any easier. Luke chapter 9, verse 24. Here's what Jesus says. He says, whoever would save his life. That's kind of like, if I'm reading it right, I think, that's what the rich young ruler's kind of doing. I don't want to give my stuff away. I accumulated. I've got it. I earned it. It's mine. It's what the rich fool's doing in chapter 12. I farmed. I planted the seeds, and I reaped the harvest, and I got all this stuff. Why wouldn't I build bigger barns? That's a good life, right? Fool, Jesus says. The rich man's got the great house with a fenced-in yard and a gate. There's a beggar there, but hey, let's don't get caught up in the details. There's a beggar down there, sure, but I got the big house and I got the world at my fingertips right here. What do you really have by faring sumptuously every day while Lazarus the beggar is going hungry? What do you really got? Saving your life by accumulating your goods. What do you really have? That's what Jesus is asking. He says in verse 24, whoever would save his life will loses his life for my sake will save it. Well, that sounds backwards, doesn't it? Sounds like the opposite of how life generally works. But what he's saying is, look, if you really want to have this life, right? If you really want to have the life that you were intended to live, what we would call the good life, then you've got to give it away. It's not a coincidence that that's what he tells the rich young ruler and Lazarus and the rich fool. It's no coincidence that when his disciples are probably wondering who's going to have the power in the kingdom, who's going to have all the authority, and who's going to have the money, and who's going to be in charge. Look, if you want to have the kind of life you are supposed to live, you've got to give it away. If you want to lose out on that life, then here's what you do. You hold it close, and you strive for more and more and more and more. That constant striving to attain, that constant focus on gaining and accumulating will lead to destruction. That's what Jesus is saying, and you've seen it play out in life. You know what it looks like in cases of unbridled greed, where people want to accumulate and gain and grow their fortunes, and who cares about anybody else? That is not the kind of life Jesus calls us to live. Christians receive life as a gift, spend it on others, not as possessions to hold and only spend on ourselves. Instead of that kind of life, verse 23, here's the call of Jesus. The call of Jesus is to, in Luke's gospel, deny yourself, take up your cross every day, and come follow after me. A writer that I like said this about it. He said it's really the call to deny the primal corrupted instinct to prioritize our security and our self-interest and our success. Now, that's hard. If I'm striving for the good life, why would I want to deny my own security, self-interest, and success? That seems counterproductive. Well, it is an upside-down kingdom, not of this world, Jesus says. And instead, you choose to emulate what Jesus does on the cross. No coincidence. In Luke 9, that he has just talked about the cross. I'm going to the cross. I'm going to die for the sake of the world. And by the way, if you want to be my disciples, you're going to have to live this kind of cross-shaped life where you deny yourself and your primal corrupted instincts to prioritize yourself. You deny that and take up your cross daily, choosing to model your life after Jesus. Forfeit the game of power. You drop out of the school of promoting yourself and your self-interest. That's not the call of Christianity. It's to deny yourself and take up your cross daily and follow after Jesus. Cross-shaped life is not a strategy for successful living. It's a demand of discipleship. And I think I would say this morning that a cross-shaped life is not just a demand that Jesus makes, it is the demand of Christianity. Sacrifice, to deny myself for the sake of other people. Now, our world and our society pushes us against that thought. It makes what's on the screen right now seem like the most foolish thing in the world, doesn't it? I mean, I'm trying to imagine, like, if somebody didn't know Jesus and had no clue or concept about Scripture or the Bible or what Jesus demanded of his people, and they came in here and they saw what I put on the screen today, they would say, that's dumb. Nobody lives like that. I think I would say, right. That's the problem. This is a cross-shaped life. It's not the path to successful living. It's the demand of discipleship. And our culture's push to strive and gain and accumulate and store up and have the world at our fingertips so we can finally live the good life lies in the face of this. The antithesis of Christianity. The call of Christ is to live our lives as if we've already given up our lives. That's the cross-shaped good life. The only way to have life is to give it away. That sounds tough. I want to be a Christian and I still want to live my conception of the good life. Isn't there like a 5-step plan to the good life or something? Isn't that a good Christian sermon? No. I'm convinced that there's really not a way to the good life, but instead the good life is the way. It's what you do. I want you to think back to that little girl I told you about, made her up in my office, okay? But I want you to think back to how I began this sermon. She grows up and she goes to school and she does very well, and she goes to college and she gets a good job and she has a great career. She's promoted along the way. Eventually she retires, starts a family, rides off into the sunset. Not one bit of that story prevents her from living the good life. She can live the good life. She can live a disciple's life at any point along that journey. Discipleship just means that we adopt a new way of thinking about our lives. When I go to school, when I go to work, when I'm in my neighborhood, when I'm at the store. It means my agendas change. It means the things that are of primary importance to me, those things may need to change too. As disciples of Jesus, we're supposed to be different than we were. There's a life change here. That's repentance. As disciples of Jesus, we're supposed to value things differently than we did before. We follow Jesus no matter where he leads or no matter what it entails, no matter what we're doing. We strive to become more and more and more like Jesus, more conformed into the image of Jesus. No matter what state of life we are in, it's every day, not just on Sunday. Discipleship is a full-time job, not just a weekend hobby. It's not something we just do one day a week, not a one-stop shop. It should change how we live every day. So a little girl grows up and she goes to school. How does she treat her classmates? Does she seek her own interests first, or does she deny herself and treat others how she'd want to be treated? She can be a disciple at school. She enters the workforce. How does she treat her coworkers? How does she treat her bosses? Does she treat others as she would want to be treated, or does she seek her personal self-interest above all? When she gets married, how does she treat her spouse? Does she have to get her way every time there's a decision to be made, or does she sometimes deny herself, take up her cross daily, and love and support her husband, even when he is pretty much unlovely? When she has children, how does she treat her children? Is her singular focus on advancement in the world, or is it on being a blessing and raising her children to be a blessing to the world? Denying ourselves may mean different things in different contexts, but it always will mean bearing your cross every day. There's no way around Luke 9:23. There's no way around it. If you want to follow Jesus, it means that you must deny yourself and take up your cross every day. What if all the self-interested and selfish striving to gain the world and have it at our fingertips to live the good life is precisely what keeps us from living that kind of life? How would I know? How would I figure it out? Then what? Wealthy businessman was at the pier of a small coastal Mexican village late one morning, and a small boat comes in to dock. On that small boat that docks at the Mexican fishing village is one fisherman. And that one fisherman has already caught 3 or 4 pretty good-sized fish that day. Joe James is jealous, right? Yeah. The businessman compliments the fisherman on the fish and says, well, how long did it take you to catch that? Mexican fisherman said, only a little while. Well, why didn't you stay out a little bit longer and catch more fish? You could have made a fortune out there with what you've already done this morning. Well, he says, I've already caught enough fish to feed my family for several days and even to give some fish away to my friends in the village. I don't need to stay out anymore. The American businessman says, well, what do you do with the rest of your time? I mean, you're done. It's like 10 a.m. and you're done. What are you going to do with the rest of your day? Well, I'll go take a nap. I sleep late when I don't go fishing. I'll fish a little, play with my children, take siestas with my wife, Maria. And then I'll stroll into the village every night where I eat and I play guitar with mi amigos. It's a good life. The businessman scoffs. And he says, I'm experienced in business and I can help you, and you ought to spend more time on your little fishing boat. And then with the proceeds, you can buy a bigger boat. And with the proceeds from your bigger boat, you can buy a whole fleet of fishing boats. And then you can set up a distribution center right here in this village. You'll control all the product, you'll control all of the processing, and all of the distribution. You are going to make a fortune. Now, of course, eventually you'll need to leave this small coastal fishing village. You have to move to an urban center, maybe Mexico City to start, and then maybe up to LA and maybe New York City, eventually where I live. You'll be rich. The fisherman said, great, but how long will that take? The businessman said, 15, 20 years maybe, not long at all. And then what? The businessman said, well, that's the best part. When the time is right, you'll sell your company and you'll become insanely rich. You'll make millions. Wow, he said. And then what? Then you can retire. You can move to a small coastal fishing village where you can sleep late, fish a little, play with your children, take siestas with your wife, Maria, stroll into the village every night to eat and play guitar with your amigos. That's the good life. Have you considered that your reach for that good life is what's preventing you from living it today? Have you considered that Luke 9, 23, and 24, and 25, they're still the words of Jesus? Have you considered maybe that your striving, your reach for the good life is what's keeping you from denying yourself? Because let's face it, in our world, that kind of talk sounds strange. Who lives like that? Not enough people. Has your desire for the good life kept you from taking up your cross every day? Because how do you get ahead? If you keep sacrificing, that's what a cross is. How do you get ahead if you keep sacrificing? Have you considered that your desire for this good life, to have the world at your fingertips, is keeping you from following Jesus? Because agendas must change and priorities must change and what's important to me must change. Striving to gain the whole world, to live the good life, may be the very thing that keeps us from living the life Jesus wants us to live today. Is it time for you to live a new kind of life? There's no way to the new life or the good life. Living the new life, living the good life, that is the way Jesus taught. And so today, is it the case that you need to follow Jesus? That's who he's talking to, people. And he says, look, if you want to follow me and be my disciple, here's what you do. You deny yourself, you take up your cross every day, and you come follow me. Is that what you need to do today? For some in this room, that may mean beginning at the starting line of faith. But you probably already have that because you're here. For others this morning, it may be that we progress from just knowing, believing in Jesus to actually doing some life change, denying of ourselves, taking up of our crosses every day, and following Jesus. If I've been doing the opposite of that, that's what the Bible calls repentance, and that's the call, right? You change who you are, what you're doing. For some in this room, it may be the day that you're ready to be baptized into Christ. You follow Jesus into the water. It's a pledge of allegiance to him. It's a commitment of life that I'm going to live my life in the ways that he teaches. Will I get it perfect? No, nobody did except him. Will everything be easy? No, it may actually be a little bit harder. It may be a tougher kind of life to sacrifice and deny yourself, but it's what the Lord commands. So you follow Jesus into the water, and you find him there, and your sins are washed away. You come up out of the water renewed, ready to live this new kind of life. You're putting off the old, denying yourself, taking up your cross so that you can come through and put on the new kind of life that our Lord wants us to live. Maybe you need to start living this kind of life. Maybe you need to get back to living this kind of life that Jesus promises for and demands of his disciples. What if you're already in place to live the abundant life that Jesus promised? What if you're already in the place to live the good life that Jesus commands? But you, like that wealthy businessman, you've just not realized it yet, that you got what you need right here. What if there really is no path or way to life? What if the good life really is the way that we are supposed to live? Deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow Jesus. And what if you're just missing it right now because you're caught up in the rat race, striving to gain and gain and gain? Let's just say, hypothetically, that you gain what you're seeking. And then what? What do you do when you get it? Or maybe you're missing it because you're trying to gain the whole world and have it at your fingertips so that finally you can live the good life. Let's just say that you gain a little bit more than the next gal or the next guy. Let's just say you gain whatever it is that means the world to you right now. You got it, you achieved it, you succeeded in it. And then what? Or let's just say you're prioritizing right now your success and your self-interest, and I just want to get ahead so that I can coast for a little while. Let's say you get ahead. Do you really think you're going to coast? Has that ever happened? Let's just say you make it. Then what? Are you seeking comfort, recreation, fun above anything else? Let's just say you have all the time in the world. You've gained that whole world of time. You can do whatever in the world you want to do. What if you get it? Then what? What if you realize today that striving to gain whatever means the world to you today, you're striving to gain it, what if you realize that that striving is preventing you right now from living the cross-shaped good life that you were made to live? What if you realize that this morning? That all the striving is preventing me, and all the trying to gain is keeping me away from the good life that our Lord wants us to live. What if you realize that today? Then what? In just a second, we're going to stand up. We're going to sing a song. It's the invitation song, and it's the song we use every week to invite you and others and everybody to make the change that you need to make to live the kind of life that you were made to live. We're going to sing that song. And then what? You see, that's the part in my notes where it stops. I don't have another line written. So I guess it's up to you to decide what you do with that information now. You heard the sermon. Then what? While we stand and while we sing.